There comes a time along the spiritual path where we develop more sensitivity, we expand our awareness to the more subtle realities, and we increase coherence within our field. And when this happens, we start to develop certain abilities. These abilities, spiritual powers, are often referred to in the yogic tradition as siddhis. Siddhis aren't supernatural. They're actually a natural blossoming or fruit of consciousness unbinding or integrating density. So what looks like magic is actually reduced interference between consciousness and creation. And so when we're talking about interference, what am I referencing? We're looking at the construct of the ego, which serves a purpose of organizing this reality so that our consciousness can interface with it. But that organizing principle can create fixed identities, concepts that compartmentalize our reality, hidden motivations, different ways, different obstacles that keep the flow of source from moving through freely and unobstructed. And as that interference begins to dissolve, creation becomes simpler. It becomes alignment. It becomes coherence. But what can happen along the path is that the spiritual powers run the risk of creating another identity, and that is the ego taking on the spiritual robes. Many of us have heard of the spiritual ego, and so now the spiritual powers become a fuel for creating a more subtle sense of hierarchy and another sense of power over something rather than power with or power through. And so now worldly power puts on the cloak of spiritual power. So there's a really great book, How to Know God. It's Yoga Aphorisms by Patanjali. In this book, it mentions the development of the siddhis and the spiritual powers. We can be caught in a sort of lower God state. And that lower God state is when the small self experiences expanded capacities. Our will becomes more effective, our personal will. Our ability to manifest becomes more accelerated, and our, claircognizance or gnosis becomes more exalted. We are able to access higher levels of knowledge, but yet the self-identity has not yet been fully dissolved. And this self then takes on an identity of feeling godlike rather than being God-moved. That's why you'll find in a lot of traditions warnings around chasing after spiritual powers or making that a focus, and why they say that the siddhis can be a distraction and power is not awakening. These abilities can be beautiful and very supportive and can be of service, but are not complete indicators for realization. For me, I feel the siddhis or these spiritual powers are a natural outpouring and expression of love and how love wants to move through us, and that they arise in the moment in which they are needed. I've experienced examples of this in my own life. I'll give a short story. One day I was in the line for the ferry to Alcatraz, and just in front of me was a small family with an elderly woman. I heard her complaining about her back and not being sure if she could make the trip, and so the family was considering canceling and just leaving, something in me just wanted to offer her a massage, standing in line. Like, that's actually going to do anything logically. And so she was open to it and was just like rubbing her back, and I don't even know what I was doing. And then after a couple of minutes, she started giggling, and she's like, "Oh my God, what did you do?" She's like, "All my pain is gone." And she was so happy that she could go on the trip. And I was like, I don't know, it was just a little massage. And that was it. And I wasn't thinking like, oh, I'm going to heal you and you can go on your trip. Or I just, something said, just give her a massage or offer her, some touch. And I had no idea like what was going to happen. And I feel that is when these spiritual powers flow naturally. In integrated consciousness, these types of spiritual powers are situational. They are often in pure service with no sense of a person doing something, and are often not even noticed by the person that it's flowing through. In this particular moment, it functioned like compassion and timing and what many of us would reference as grace. And spiritual powers become a natural byproduct of being aligned. And when you ask, well, alignment to what? And that alignment is alignment to love, and that coherent state between the mind and the heart and the body and the heart that is centered on the eternal. And when love becomes a primary focus, power becomes transparent. There's a quote in the Bible that had always captured my attention since I was a teen, and it's from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, and it goes like this: "If I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but I have not love, I am nothing." This is a developmental truth along the path of remembering ourselves. In this instance, love, absolute love and truth, is the absence of self-reference, small self, as a separate entity. Without love, the use of force can show up very subtly. And force has a different quality to it than being in alignment. Force has a sort of contraction energy to it, whereas alignment has a flow without a sense of a doer. And without love, powers can actually reinforce the illusion of separation, even on a subtle level, or can consolidate identity and reinforce an idea of control or a sense of hierarchy. And one of the main identities that we can get caught in is this the victim, perpetrator, savior / martyr program complex that reinforces certain identities and reinforces concepts, reinforces a sense of hierarchy. But when love is applied, or when something becomes a natural outpouring of love, that power dissolves into service. The sense of the little self also begins to dissolve. The sense of humility starts to stabilize. And humility not in the way that has been misunderstood, where we make ourselves small or less than. True humility is recognizing that there is no hierarchy. We are all of the same essence. When things are also moved by love, coherence deepens and embodiment deepens. As the old structures fall away in the world while we're in this time of transition, and the ways of creation that reinforce the illusion of separation begin to dissolve, things may feel uncertain, but there is one place you can turn to that is steady and unwavering and eternal, and that is the divinity and the spark that live within your own heart. So the world doesn't need more heroes, it needs more people who remember the love that they are. I'm not saying not to do what you're being called to do in the world, but take the time to look at the layers of motivation. The question is this how love wants to flow through me? Are my motivations tainted by fear in any way? Is there an attachment to an outcome? Is this pure service? And am I the one doing this? And to bring this to a close, I'd like to invite you to close your eyes. And we're going to call on the light of love that flows through you now to illuminate within your heart and your will and your mind any hidden motivations and interference between consciousness and creation. We're just going to allow this to be an awareness. Nothing has to be done. This awareness will have a time release effect. And every aspect of ourself that needs to be seen will be seen in the right moment. Nothing needs to be done. It just needs to be witnessed. Witnessed in the light of the love that flows through you, always. And as these interferences dissolve, more of your unique frequency of love that you are will naturally shine through. And how you serve in every moment will be a natural outpouring of that love. In humility and gratitude for all of creation, and for the source from which all things flow. You are always loved. You are of love, and I am so honored to be walking with you.